Finally, I am the president's wife. All of the inheritance belongs to us as a couple. I won't give you a penny. How outrageous to say such a thing after her father-in-law's funeral. But when someone is so evil, it's more laughable than irritating. It's still sad that she's saying such things. I'll tell you everything from now on. My name is Stephanie. I'm 69 years old and have become addicted to watching ear cleaning videos on YouTube. Dirty? No, it's refreshing. I'm completely hooked. This is the story of when I felt the most refreshed in my life. It was a long time ago, but one day my eldest son Anthony said, "I want to get married because we'd have a baby soon." At that time, it was no longer unusual to get married because of an unplanned pregnancy. However, I was a little bothered by the way he said it was because they'd have a baby. If he had said something like, "My girlfriend got pregnant and it's a good opportunity," I would have understood, but I couldn't help but wonder if they wouldn't have gotten married if she hadn't gotten pregnant. Well, maybe it's rude to take young people's words too seriously. We welcomed Layla, who later became our eldest son's wife, as a member of our family. We have been running a company for generations, and even though the company was small during the previous president's time, it has grown considerably under my husband's leadership. There was no particular agreement, but if things went smoothly, our son was expected to succeed him. Therefore, the qualifications of our son's wife are somewhat of a concern. However, Layla is short-tempered, loves money, and is selfish on top of that. She seemed to be hiding her true nature during the wedding greetings and ceremony, but her true nature became apparent every time she came home. I later learned that there was almost no dating period between her and my son, but she kept saying that she wanted to get married from the beginning. There was a sense of being after our money between us. Although it sounds bad to say that pregnancy was a planned crime, I can't help but think that she targeted my son. Layla boasted before giving birth that, "This child will be the future president of the company." Because of her, my grandson's name was King. It's an appropriate name for someone who aims to be at the top of management. However, it is also a name that we opposed as a family. But she didn't listen and named him King anyway. Everyone there felt sorry for my grandson and their hands shook when they held him. What? Why don't you divorce her and kick out such a wife? To be honest, my husband and I were considering that path just a little bit too. So even after my grandson was born, we secretly had my son and grandson undergo DNA testing just in case. It was undoubtedly my son's offspring. Then I hesitated whether or not to kick out this wife. Honestly, I was worried about whether Layla, who gave my grandson a strange name, could raise him properly or not. And since I thought he had our blood in him, he was still cute to me. As long as my son didn't say he wanted a divorce, we thought it would be better for us to turn a blind eye and watch over his wife and grandson's future instead of tearing apart the couple by force. So I stuck to the stance of watching over them without doing anything that would tear apart the couple by force. Well, my daughter has become a complete sister-in-law and wants to kick out her sister-in-law with all her might, saying, "That wife is no good." I understand how she feels, but after giving birth, Layla avoided meeting us due to child rearing. However, when my grandson turned 5 years old, my son, who had returned home alone, revealed the fact that if Layla is making King do extracurricular activities, she is providing him with education for the future such as swimming, kids dance, English, and a special cram school that makes his brain turn faster. My husband and I were at a loss because children should be raised freely. My son also seems to disagree with his wife's strict educational policy. However, he is also raising his first child and is not confident whether his sense is correct or not. As a result of discussions involving my daughter as well, we decided that my son would come home with the whole family at once and we would watch over them if it was too much to handle. Although she said it was troublesome to come home, my son somehow convinced her and they came to our house after a long time. In short, it was beyond our imagination. In a bad way. Does that mean you finally recognize my son as your successor? What? Everyone was dumbfounded by her opening remark about the successor when they met again. First of all, we didn't know who would be nominated if our son took over the company. We talked with my husband about leaving it to the next person who took over the company and told our daughter-in-law as well before. However, since the naming of my grandson was denied by us, she has a tendency to think that these people hate her and deny everything she says. In other words, she is in a state of doubting everything we say as being mean or lying because they hate me. Regarding the successor as well, she had a narrow view that we were going to exclude the child she gave birth to from being the successor no matter what she said. To be honest, anyone with business acumen and charisma who can be entrusted with the company would do. Although he was small, I didn't want to show my grandson dirty succession disputes among adults. My daughter said, "Shall we play together?" and tried to take my grandson outside when Layla slapped her hand and shouted, "This child is the future successor. Don't try to separate him from his parents. We are not kidnappers." My husband and I intervened by saying, "Isn't this a bit of an overreaction?" I thought it wouldn't be good to intervene too much since it was about the couple and their children, but since my daughter was unreasonably slapped, I wanted to say something. However, she started getting angry and said, "Can you confirm with me first if it's okay for me to play with King before taking him away?" She may have a point, but it wasn't the right atmosphere to bring that up. If she had said something like that, she would have definitely said, "This is important for this child's future, so I'll let him hear it as it is." That's not good. We don't want to tell her child about that. However, I couldn't say, "You would say this if this happened, right?" If she said, "I wouldn't say such a thing," it would be over. My daughter seemed to understand that and lightly avoided the situation by moving to another room. If my son's family is like this all the time, the atmosphere seems bad and I can't help but feel sorry for them. Layla took out a study drill from her bag and handed it to her son with an indifferent attitude. "King, it's study time." The drill contained elementary school 6th grade mathematics and easy French for 7-year-olds. My grandson is 5 years old. There's too much cramming education. Maybe she has a parent's heart that wants to extend his extraordinary intelligence, but I thought at least let him play freely when he comes home to his grandparents' house. I said, "Layla, can't you let King play a little?" Just for today, when I glanced at my grandson, he smiled for a moment at my words and showed a happy expression. He really wants to play. Seeing his cute way of being happy like a child made me smile too. When I asked him if he wanted to play too, King started jumping up and down on the spot saying yes. If I thought that this was something that wouldn't hurt my eyes even if I put it in them. Don't tempt King. I prioritize studying for this child's future. We didn't come here to play with him, so we're going home. She got angry and pulled her son's hand and walked briskly towards the entrance despite her husband trying to stop her. The future presidential candidate is important, but the next president is treated roughly. In the end, she left her husband behind and took only her son home. That night, I suggested to my drunken son that they get divorced, but he didn't want to because he was worried about whether he could get custody of his child since he was still young. If Layla becomes obsessed with King by saying that he has the blood of the president even after divorce, there is a high possibility of trouble even after divorce. If divorce doesn't change anything either way, isn't it better for the family to be together for the child? I told him that if they became a fake couple, their child would suffer, but my son said he would try his best and was looking for ways to make their married life work somehow. It's a difficult problem, so we can't recommend them to divorce by force. Although they separated immediately after marriage due to her husband's debt problem, we also know couples who have repaired their relationship. The form of marriage varies from person to person. In the end, after this day, we became estranged from Layla again and my son worked hard to repair his relationship with his wife. After that, my son and his wife had their second child, Sally. We haven't met Layla yet, so our relationship is still the same, but it seems that the relationship with my son has improved a lot. My son also said, "We have children and we got married, so we want to face it properly and make a good family." Although he once considered divorce, if it works out, there is nothing better. Marriage has its ups and downs, so it feels like they're starting from here? That's what I thought, but... After the second child was born, Layla contacted us again about the issue of the heir. She said, "Anthony is over 30 years old now, and my father-in-law is getting older little by little, so shouldn't you think positively about it?" Then I realized. This daughter-in-law was waiting for her son and husband to get older and had temporarily improved their relationship. For that reason, she was very fond of King as a candidate for the heir, but she didn't seem to be very interested in her daughter. My son also complained. Because his wife said, "I wanted a boy, not a girl." And he gradually began to feel disgusted with his wife who didn't love both children equally. If this were a story, they would have divorced easily, but in fact, at the same time, her parents who were older than us feel ill, and my sons had to live with them and take care of them. Her siblings pushed her to take care of Layla, the youngest daughter. Her parents were also getting old and having trouble understanding things, and if they talked about divorce, their son would be accused of cheating and it wouldn't work out. Due to various factors, they did not get divorced. Moreover, the second grandchild was not being loved by Layla's parents because they said a girl can't be an heir. We wanted a boy. King was being loved, but he was tired of studying at his desk and his relationship with Layla had been deteriorating lately. One day, after he entered high school for a while, King disappeared. Strictly speaking, my son found him easily, but King himself took an attitude of not returning home. Because he hated his mother. Layla was furious about this and disowned King, saying, "If you hate me that much, that's fine. In this day and age, even women can become presidents. So Sally will be the heir." On the other hand, she often called us and said things like, "Has your father-in-law's retirement date been decided? I want you to officially declare your husband as the heir soon." She seemed to be more obsessed with the president's seat than when she first got married. Then several more years passed and one day when King became an adult, her husband who had been fighting illness passed away. We knew that someday this would happen since cancer was discovered, and we thought we were prepared for it. But losing a longtime family member is still painful. My sons felt the same way and we were all depressed during the funeral. Layla and her daughter Sally did not attend the funeral. Sally had never met us because we were estranged, so it couldn't be helped. Besides, Layla had made a mysterious trump card of, "Don't let them meet until the heir problem is resolved." I think it's rude for a wife who doesn't attend her father-in-law's funeral, but on such a day I didn't want to hear questions like, "What happened to the heir problem?" either, and if I showed such an ugly side at a ceremony where employees gathered, it would damage my husband's honor. So I thought it was better not to attend. After the funeral, while having a modest meal with my son and daughter at home and talking about my husband, the doorbell rang. To our surprise, Layla and Sally appeared. Sally, whom I saw for the first time, looked a lot like my son. When I opened the door, Layla said with a smile, "The funeral is over, right?" I thought it would be rude not to come, so I came and greeted. "It's not necessary," I replied. Although I thought it was rude to have such an attitude towards someone who came to greet us, I felt that it was worse not to come to the funeral. Above all, I just wanted to mourn my husband's death. Considering Layla's previous remarks, it was understandable that we didn't want to see her today. However, she answered greedily, "I can't let you do that," and forced her way into the house. Sally looked at her with a troubled expression. "Wait a minute," I shouted, but she ignored me and headed for the bedroom. As soon as she saw my husband's photo, she laughed and said, "Finally." "What?" Layla said, "Finally my father-in-law is dead. I'm relieved. I'm finally the president's wife. Everything is ours. We won't give you a penny." Rather than being irritated, I was dumbfounded. My daughter and son, who had rushed over thinking something had happened, were also staring at her in disbelief. When she saw my son, she hugged him and said, "Congratulations. You're finally the president." My son stiffened as if to say, "What is this woman?" My daughter started laughing and said, "There are people like this." At first I was annoyed, but when I realized how obsessed she was with becoming president and wife without wavering, it became funny. Watching my daughter laugh made me laugh too. "Why are you laughing?" Layla looked at us suspiciously. "Because, you still think my brother is the heir," my daughter said. "Huh? But he is the eldest son." Layla was taken aback. Then my son cut in and said, "After Dad found out he was sick, I told him I wouldn't be his successor. There's even a document." After hearing my son's confession, Layla exclaimed, "What? Why did you do that?" My son replied, if I became the successor, you would run wild like you are now. Besides, there were other suitable candidates. Layla asked, suitable candidates? My son replied, yeah. For a while, my sister and mother will become the president and vice president. Layla said, why are your mother and sister who didn't even work at that company suitable candidates? You also received a position and worked hard. My son replied, that's why. Wait a minute. I'll call someone upstairs. Layla asked, someone? Ignoring her question, my son went upstairs and brought someone back with him. Layla exclaimed, King. Why are you here? Weren't you living alone far away? Layla was surprised and looked at her son who rubbed his eyes swollen from crying over his grandfather's death. He said, you're doing something embarrassing again. I've been living in this house since high school. My aunt said she was getting married and moving out, so I took that room and lived there. Layla asked, what? What does that mean? Not understanding what was going on and about to get angry, I said to her, shall I explain it to you? On the day King disappeared, he had actually come to our house instead of his friend's house from the beginning. So my son knew King's whereabouts from the beginning. King said, I don't want to be near my mother anymore. I want to live freely. Respecting King's feelings, my son set up a scenario where King was staying at his friend's house and persuaded Layla to let him live with us somehow. My husband's job as a manager was what moved King, who had dropped out of high school and was completely exhausted mentally. King enjoyed listening to my husband's stories about his work as a manager and became a grandpa's boy. With my encouragement, my husband hired King at his company and began teaching him the ropes of the business. He could become the successor or change jobs and live a different life. That was our idea as a couple, to give him money and skills to leave that mother. Layla said, I see. So I can't be the president's wife anymore, but the future president's mother is confirmed? If the former president himself hired him, then that must be it. I don't really understand it though. Her expression relaxed as she said this. Her son replied, no, I'm thinking of divorcing you. What? Why did we talk about divorce before? My feelings haven't changed. Your parents are dead now too, and there is no one to stop our divorce. Sally is finally 15 years old this year and can choose custody for herself. King hates you too, so we'll get divorced and I'll take both of them. I can't accept that. Even the children are just rebelling against me now. Right, Sally, King? You don't want our divorce, right? Layla clung to her children for help. However. What? I've always hated you. I've been helped by my grandparents and father. I don't need you now. I've wanted your divorce for a long time. Stop treating me like your daughter only at times like this. You didn't care about me at all. Only Dad and my brother cared about me. King and Sally glared at Layla with cold eyes. Yes, King had always wanted his parents to divorce. So his son tried to go through with the divorce. If Layla's parents, who would get violent when they heard the word divorce, weren't there, they would have forced the issue. So once Dad's situation is settled, let's proceed with the divorce. I'm going to make sure it goes through this time, so please be prepared. You're lying. Layla hung her head at her son's words, and Sally said she didn't want to go home with her mother. So they stayed overnight at our house, and Layla went home alone. After that, Layla begged my son many times not to get divorced. She said she didn't know how to live alone anymore. However, my son refused to accept it and they got divorced. The property division was also quite contentious, but thanks to a good lawyer, they didn't suffer any major losses. The children will live with their father's surname and the long-standing marital problem was resolved. It seems that Layla had made some reckless investments without any knowledge because she wanted to become a president's wife in the future and earn money. She also bought paintings that were said to sell well in the future and left them at her parents' house. However, she couldn't become a president's wife or a president's mother, and her investments were a big failure. The paintings didn't sell either and she suffered great losses. Now she seems to be working multiple part-time jobs. She had been a full-time employee at one point, But since then she has been unable to find work after being fired for saying that work and salary were not commensurate with each other. If she doesn't fix that personality that got worse as she got older, she'll have a hard life. As for us, our grandchildren have grown up safely, King has become a manager, Sally is married and currently pregnant. My son is also working hard and supporting King. Thanks to our early marriage, I'd see my great-grandchildren. I heard that if parents get married, pregnant and give birth around the age of 20, their family will become similar in the future. Maybe it's true. In any case, it's a happy story. If we do our best, maybe we can see our great-great-grandchildren. No, it's probably impossible. Surely my husband in heaven is looking forward to the birth of his great-grandchild. I'll love my grandchildren for you too. I'll live long. Fight.